All right, Jester on the Run, episode 2. I'm here with two guys that just did their first 100-mile finish. So the guy on my left is
Francisco.
the guy on my right.
Gabriel.
All right, so each of these guys have their own unique stories, and I ended up individually sharing probably close to 40 miles with each of them out there, and I had the privilege of talking to them about their first 100 and just the different things we go through. So, first off, being your first 100, you think you'll do another one?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Right answer.
Definitely.
And
No question.
tell us, all right, we'll start with you, Gabe.
Okay.
When we started this, it was your birthday.
Yeah.
You're how old?
22 years old on April 5th.
And how many miles had you done before coming here? The longest race you've done?
The longest race I've done is half marathon, 13.1 miles. And then I've only done, this is my 4th event total. I've done a 10K and a 15K.
All right, Francisco, your racing background prior to coming here.
I was invited to attend across the years and went to run and tried to get the 100 and ran 77. And then after that, I couldn't wait to try again and went to a jackpot in Vegas, I think sometime in February, and made it to 80, and then that was it. So I think by the time I got back, I'd already pulled the trigger again
Number 3.
on this
So-
event.
So we have two different situations. Gabe being total babe in the woods, having done 13.1 and coming out here to try for 100. Francisco having 2 attempts, didn't quite get to the goal of 100, but learned a lot and still want to go back and get it done. So 2 different perspectives, 2 different experiences. So what made you decide to do this particular event?
Well, what excited me was the fact that it landed on my birthday. I thought it would be a unique milestone. And I just had a curiosity. I actually discovered this event sometime last year towards the end after researching ultramarathons when I discovered, of their existence. I've only known that ultramarathoning was a sport for 5 or 6 months now.
Mm-hmm.
And, this was one of the first events I discovered, and it appealed to me and kind of stuck in my head until I registered last month.
And so you knew nobody this race when you came here. You have no friends that are ultra runners.
No, I'm the only person before now that I knew that's ever run a half marathon even. So I kind of thought that was my own limit at the time.
And Francisco, you have friends that are ultra runners. You came with people that you know.
I do. My first invite, Brian Recor invited me to drive to Arizona, and then I think twisted my arm to go right back to jackpot.
So Arizona, then Nevada.
Yep, and
then back to home state.
here. And this area I've spent a lot of time in, so it was a pleasure to come back here. And then also the jackpot was a blue a blue event.
Beyond
and,
Limits running. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I really wanted to come back and attempt again.
And you have 3 friends that are here with you.
I do. I've got a great crew.
Yeah.
Brian, Amy, and Oliver all really kept me going when I wanted to quit multiple times, and drove me to keep pushing. So I didn't want to quit for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as a Marine, it's similar to, you're not fighting for God and country, you're fighting for the man on your left and the man or woman on your right. And so it's a team. The team came out to support you, and you got to follow through on this for them.
Yeah, absolutely. They were here, and I was running, but they were all working hard too, right? Anticipating what I needed or what they thought I might need, and I've learned some lessons, but still don't have a lot of experience. So I'm really just trying to absorb that and work through things.
All right, cool. Now, neither of you are native Californians.
Nope.
No,
Utah, Texas, and you somehow came in. You came by way of Alaska and down to California.
Yeah.
And in the Marines, have you been at different
I spent all my time on the West Coast, so
Okay.
Camp Pendleton, Oceanside area.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about what you actually did out there. You did the 3-day, the 72 hour,
72 hours, yeah.
and your goal was initially when you came out here, what was your first goal?
My first goal was just to do the race, just to see what I was capable of. But since the first really award was the 100-mile buckle, I kind of had it in my mind that 100 miles was the minimum I wanted to do. And then anything beyond that is just, to let me know what I can do.
And so 100 was your goal. You got to 100,
Yeah.
and then
Talking to you, you told me don't just stop at 100. If you have it in you to do more, and you actually recommended, since it was my 22nd birthday, to go for 122.
so I recommended that, but you got there and you didn't stop.
No.
What'd you do after that?
No, because you said, well, if you're doing 122, you might as well do 124 because that's a 200K. And then, I jokingly said, well, I might as well just do 132 because that's 10 times my PR. And then you said, well, 150 is a good number too. So we.
Where'd you end up?
142.
142. So you went from doing a half marathon,
Yeah.
blew past marathon, 50K, 50 mile, 100K, 100 mile, all the way up to 142.
Yeah.
So the point to Gabe's story is you don't have to do the traditional, I've got to first dip my toe into a 50K and then wait a couple months and maybe try a 50 mile. You don't have to do that. That wasn't my process either. I went from marathon to 100 mile. You can do whatever you want to do. So that was what happened with you. So you were in the 72 hour, you 142.
Yeah.
You're in the 100 mile.
Yep.
Then did 100 miles.
Did 100 miles.
And do you know what your finish time was? We didn't even check, did we? We knew it was well under the cutoff time.
Sub 30, I think it was 29:30 ballpark. We'll have to check.
Yeah. So tell us about your downs. What were the? We know there's ups and downs, but what was your deepest, darkest time? We'll start with you, Francisco.
I think from the start of the race to about
That's
mile
right, 0 to 15.
52.
Oh, you've been to
yeah.
52? Oh, you
Zero-
tell me 0 to 15.
0 to 15 was really tough, and then from 15 to 20, I'd not been accustomed to struggling as much in the beginning, just from my limited experience. But it was really difficult, and I feel like some of the back-to-back attempts had kind of taken a lot out of me. It was like overdrawn. I know I must have told Brian at least 10 times, but he kept me going, and the nighttime is hard for me from my personal experience, and you picked me up, Ed, I think right at about 52, and started changing the way I thought about things. Everyone encouraged me to keep pushing, and then you added on and shared your experience with me, not just to get me to the 100, but things that I can take with me into other races, right? And then I could also share with others.
Cool. So I did your final 40 with you, something around 40. I did your first 30.
34.
Okay, and then did we do one?
We did
your
the
final lap?
final four.
Final four. Okay.
Final four
So,
together.
okay.
Yeah.
So, what was your darkest moment?
My darkest moment, after the first night, I tried to lay down for 5 or 6 hours, and I realized I could only force myself to sleep for about an hour. And so the next 2 nights, I tried just going through the night, because in my mind, I want to be able to sleep even if I tried. And so the second night, I ran from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m., and I laid down by the aid station for 30 minutes. And then when I got back up, with the intentions of continuing, I realized I had all sorts of blisters that I wasn't aware of. And I was just completely cooled off, lost all my momentum, and just was shaking, and my jaw was clattering like a cartoon. Yeah, I could
And
hear
what
it.
mile was this
And
at?
mile-wise, it was actually that night I stayed up because I was trying to hit 100. It was mile 96. And so I just went to bed, and then when I woke up, I went to change my socks, and all 10 of my toes were off the floor, just from blisters on the front of my feet holding them off the ground. So I ended up the next morning, I started again, and I was able to get the next 4 miles in and complete the 100, but it was tough.
Yeah.
Just fighting through that pain. But
At what point did you turn things around? And because obviously you didn't stop at 100.
yeah,
You kept on going, so something must have happened to get you back on track.
yeah, and I probably credit, the attitude, of just the advice you've given me during the first 30 miles, because we were running together and you asked me, how I was feeling, and I was feeling good, and you just laughed and said, well, that's about to change. And then you said, but don't worry too much because it'll change again. And I know that from previous experiences that, you have good times, you have bad times. The most important thing is just to keep going, and eventually things will turn around. So I tried mentally not to put too much, importance on what I was feeling as much as what I was doing. And I knew, as long as I keep moving, I'll eventually get there. But if I stop, I will never get there. So
Yeah.
I just kept going,
All right.
one step at a time.
Now, I'm going to talk about some things I know about both of you. I know you had a very annoying situation that occurred and got very painful, and then we found a little cure for it. So why don't you tell us about of the many different ailments that you went through out there, but the one in particular, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, I had some serious chafing, and I'd had some of it before.
And where was this chafing, by the way?
Oh, between my legs, and it just hurt so much. It's something that I had experienced before to a lesser degree, and then I even tried to stay on top of it this time, but it got away from me. So, fortunately, Ed, I think he spoke to Maya?
Maury Boyd,
Maury Boyd, and
retired nurse.
what she had was some lidocaine, and when you shook it at me and I was coming through, I was really thrilled to give it a shot. And what I didn't anticipate is that it was going to really resolve more pain than I anticipated. It really did the job. So
Like magic.
Yep.
Yeah, that's some good stuff. All right, and you have a story about your shoes and socks. So tell us
Yeah.
that whole thing.
So, well, it kind of started off as a joke. I've been wearing the same socks for close to 5 years. And so one day I went to put on my socks, and then I stepped on the ground, and the flooring at home is all wood floor, so it felt like I was barefooted, even though I just put on my socks. So I looked, and the whole bottom was worn out. And so I sent a picture to my coworker, and he knew I was getting ready to do this race, and it was my birthday. So for my birthday, he bought me a pack of socks. And then the shoes I wear the same shoes to run in, to train in, to work in, to go to school in. And so, the sides of those shoes are blown out, and my big toe comes out of the top. And so he said, well, I did a Spartan 5K, a little while back, and I have an old pair of shoes that I was going to put in the garage sale, but I'll just give them to you. So he ended up giving me, a pack of socks and a pair of shoes I ran 142 miles in the day before the event. And they're Nike road running shoes and not even trail running shoes.
Didn't that somebody tell you do nothing new on the day of the race?
Yeah, and
As long as it worked for you.
yeah, but I think what kind of carried me through this whole experience was my own ignorance in a way, if that makes sense,
I think
because
it does.
because
you didn't know what you didn't know.
I discovered ultramarathoning by reading books of the top players. So
Yeah.
to me, running 100 miles was kind of the norm. So coming in, I kind of expected that of myself automatically, not knowing, the normal pains or what to go through. I just thought it was all kind of part of the experience, and that if I did anything less, I'd be below average. So, you know, I think it's just kind of my own.
Yeah.
But
So, I have a theory, both of you know this, that I think people who tend to get through hundreds are people who have dealt with challenges in their lives. They've had to overcome obstacles and figure out a way over, around, under, or through it. And both of you have some unique stories in that respect. Francisco, if you don't mind sharing about your medical history and how that affected you in the race.
Sure. I'd had thyroid cancer a few years back and had it removed, half and then the rest of it. But really, what ended up happening is my parathyroid, which not a lot of people are familiar with, was damaged, and that regulates like the calcium in your body. So it's not something I had ever even really thought of. The analogy I like to give people so they have a frame of reference is it's kind of like being a type 1 diabetic, except the type 1 diabetic has insulin and a way to monitor the hormone and their blood sugar values. But for me, it doesn't exist because it's what's considered a rare disease. So I think less than 50,000 people in the U.S. Unfortunately, there's not a real incentive.
For the drug companies
for the drug companies, right?
invest in
You don't,
research.
you don't look sick, and there's nobody to be made. So it's something that I'd really struggled with in the beginning. I maybe took 35, 36 pills a day. Had to set an alarm to wake up in the middle of the night.
And these are electrolyte pills?
No, calcium pills, Citracal, but like high dose, and I had to take multiple. And I still went to the ER multiple times a week, 2-3 times a week.
And that was because of your heart?
Not even my heart at the time. There's something else called tetany, so your hand claws up and you have some trouble breathing. But for me, it did lead to some problems with my heart, because just like fingertips opening and closing, the heart's a muscle, right? So that's also affected when things drop out of range. So for a long time, I shared with you, I was kind of afraid to do anything, and avoided some of those things.
Yeah. And out there in the race, your heart was skipping. You had to slow it down. You had to get some magnesium in you. You were aware of it. You could feel it, but you knew you had to get on top of it, or else you're going to be in some big trouble.
Yeah. I've developed over time a good sense. I don't take as many pills a day now. I've been real fortunate to kind of wean myself down to a handful of pills a day. But events like this with a lot of sweating, right, I need to pay keen attention to where I'm at, and it's really by feel. It's not an exact thing. So I rely on my crew to give me some feedback. And I did have some heart skips. That happens on any given day in training. So I don't.
And you have it implanted.
I do have an implant in my chest. It's not like a defibrillator, but it's a link monitor, so it's a loop recorder, and it's set to record and then transmit, nightly, so my cardiologist and the team can review some of the events
Are
of the
they
day.
going to see when all kinds of weird heart abnormalities occurring with your reading during this event? When they look at it?
So I expect that they'll see a fair amount of AFib, some flutter maybe. Today, I know I was concerned at different points and then really focused on just how to solve the problem. I know I had some magnesium. My crew mixed it in. I took that. It came right back up. But we tried again later, and that really kind of settled a lot of that. A lot of that for me. So success. And my previous race, I kind of went from mile 60 to 80 with some really sustained regular heartbeat. And it's just uncharted territory for me.
Yeah.
Today, intermittent, but not really long. So with the positive mental attitude and just trying to take one thing at a time, dialing things back, it sort of worked out.
You're out there a couple times. We slowed the pace down. Even took a couple short little breaks just to give your body a chance to sort of reset and then get back out and get on the course again. Okay. So Gabe, I'm thinking about your living situation
Yeah.
just a short while ago. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Well, actually, coming out to California, I moved out here on some money I had. The week.
Well, tell them how you got the money.
Yeah. So the week I graduated high school, I got the opportunity to move to Alaska. So I was working at a sports fishing resort on the dock, filleting fish. So I did that anywhere from 60 to 80 hours a week. And one day I slipped while sharpening my knives and it went through my hand. And so I lost my job. My intention was, to work to save up money so I could move out to California and pursue a career as a boxer. And so after that, I just kind of suffered depression. The orthopedic surgeon I saw in Alaska said I had to see a hand specialist, and there was none within range in Alaska. So I went to Seattle, and he told me that the surgery was too complex and the recovery process was so intense that it didn't make sense to have him do the surgery when he couldn't follow up in case any complications occurred. And so he sent me to Cedar City, Utah, back where he said you need to be with your family so they can take care of you. And fortunately, 2 weeks prior to my surgery, a hand specialist from Las Vegas moved to Cedar City. So he did the surgery.
And what were the odds, they said, of you getting your hand back to normal usage?
Well, every surgeon I saw told me, I want to have full range of motion. I want to be able to feel it, because it was a total laceration to the bone. It took the tendon, the main digital nerve, and the artery. And it was funny because after it took 6 months, of therapy, intensive therapy, and the surgeon looked at me and he said, this isn't the same finger I saw 6 months ago. This is a miracle. And then he showed me his pinky, and it was curved like this. And he said, when I was 11 years old, I cut it on a piece of glass, and after all these years, that's the most I could ever move it. And he couldn't extend it any more than that or close it any more than that. So he said that's how my index finger was. So but I was pretty stubborn. So every night I would take my cast off and stuff my hand in a boxing glove and hit the bag. And so I took the workers' comp money I had and I moved to California. To train in a boxing gym. I followed a couple guys on YouTube, and I basically, gave them all the money I had, to train me, and told them, I don't really have much. I was in the gym the entire first day, and they said, when are you gonna go home? You've been here all day. And I told them, I am home. And they're like, what do you mean? And so. The owner of the gym, agreed to let me clean out his closet and live in there. So I lived in the boxing gym for 6 months, and then, I didn't know he was in the process of selling it though. So, I was able to save up enough money. I worked in a warehouse next door and was able to buy a truck. And so one day I went back to the gym. The locks were changed, and I was in my truck.
And you didn't give any forewarning to this?
No forewarning. I actually, was living in the gym. The new owners came in. They didn't know I was in the room living there, and they set the alarms. And I didn't have the key to the lock, so I walk out, and the motion sensors go off, and the alarms come. And they come and find me in the gym, and so it was awkward. It was really awkward. And then from there, it just, I persisted on and bounced from gym to gym. I went, from Big Bear to Hollywood to Van Nuys to, just living in my truck. And that was 2.5 years. 2.5 years.
And so just recently you actually moved into an actual
Yeah.
apartment.
So yeah, 4 months ago, up until 4 months ago, I was living in my truck, and I worked full time. That's what allowed me to I got a job through the school. I started going to college. Completed a full semester of college, living out of my vehicle. 3.7 GPA.
Good for you, man.
So no, I'm excited. Things are improving. So.
Good. Good. Positive attitude. I think makes a difference in which
that's
we're going
it.
to end up with. But we're going to start do something kind of different.
Yeah.
I'm going to start feet. Each of you, how are your feet? How do they affect you during the race? And we'll just kind of work our way up and talk about different aspects of your overall health. So, Francisco, feet, how are they now?
Probably pretty wrecked, I think. I feel like my sock is just fused to my foot. So, on recommendation, I'll leave it there, not change or look until I get home.
Yeah.
But from past experience, all of my toes are just massive blisters. I don't really feel that there. I feel kind of the ball.
Okay.
And it was painful, but relative to other concerns or discomfort, that's something personally that I just let that hurt.
Yeah. Okay. Did you feel any popping blisters, or they stayed intact?
At one point, I felt something on my left that kind of maybe burst and stung, and then it just came back here and there.
But you never took off your shoes and socks to address it?
I changed my socks once early, I think maybe at like mile 20, because I had a lot of sand in there.
Yeah. No gaiters? You didn't bring gaiters?
No gaiters, I don't own any. I might purchase a pair.
Maybe.
Based
Might be a
on
good
the
idea.
race.
Yeah. A race on sand.
So definitely. And I took my shoes off to just knock out sand because I was getting a pretty consistent layer in there. And outside of that, not much else.
Didn't address them. Okay. Feet. Blisters.
Yeah, I have 2 blisters on the front of my feet that are pretty big, maybe the size of a golf ball, and then one on each of the backs of my heels. But fortunately, throughout the race, they didn't bother me much, and I virtually had no blisters until like mile 120. So I was pretty fortunate.
Yeah. Did either of you use any kind of foot lubricant?
I did. I like to use trail toes.
Okay.
I'd used it for hiking before and used it in my first race, and that didn't prevent everything from blistering, but it seems to kind of prolong it.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I had anything significant going on until maybe mile 60 or so.
Okay. And did you use any? Did you even know that there's a thing called foot lube, a product to help prevent blisters?
Not really. I was, I shopped for any items I thought I might need, 45 minutes before heading out here at Walmart, and I was talking to Ann Trayson, and she said, in the very, very worst situation, you might go to a Big Five or a similar sporting goods store, but never Walmart. So I bought a little tub of Vaseline, and just kind of every, I wouldn't even say 20 miles, maybe 40, 50 miles, because I only had a few pair of socks to change between. I would just, coat my entire foot with Vaseline between the toes, under, on top. And,
Gaiters?
no gaiters.
Okay.
No gaiters.
So gatorless guys. Okay. Okay, working our way up. I know you had an issue that's bothering you right there at the bend of your foot.
Right. I've had it before when I had to transition from running to doing a lot of walking. It's not something I train. So the movement's just different and really swollen and painful. And that pain I'm familiar with now. And it was just kind of there. But towards the very end, the pain became sharp and very uncomfortable. And it was between this and the chafing. The chafing was ahead until we took the lidocaine, and then this, where we were at, we tried to apply some lidocaine, just topical.
And you popped a couple IVs as
And
well.
I took
anti-inflammatory.
Anti-inflammatories and maybe took the edge off a touch, but still just increasingly painful as we went. But towards the end, it was just something I dealt with.
All right. So working your way up. Any issues with your legs?
The last 20 or 30 miles, I started experiencing really sharp pains on the front of my shins.
Sounds similar?
Yeah, and later on I found out it was because my shoelaces are too tight. It was probably creating tension on the front there.
That makes sense.
But I was told to watch it. You know, maybe it's a stress fracture. I have a really high pain tolerance.
I've been punched in the head a couple too many times.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I've actually, my freshman year in high school, I tripped and I fractured my tibia and fibula both, and shattered my ankle on a Friday, and I didn't go to the doctor on a Monday because I thought I sprained it. But we saw the X-rays, and you know, they were amazed I made it that long.
So that's a gift that you do have a high pain tolerance when you go and do an event like this.
Yeah.
It's going to involve suffering and certain levels of pain.
Yeah, and I think some of my past experience have definitely contributed to my mental toughness. I'm pretty stoic and not very expressive, you know, of my pain. So.
All right, so coming up, knees. Anything with knees, either of you?
Yeah, my right knee, kind of like IT band. Some pain, but relative to what else was going on, very minimal. And for my first run it across the years, I've been going pretty consistently to physical therapy and have some tools that I sometimes apply consistently to just make that pain not come back. Yeah.
Okay. All right, good. Any knee issues for you?
Throughout the race, different intervals, I've had a couple, you know, just aches, but, you know, I just worked through it. My half marathon actually was the beach trail in Long Beach, and it left me with much sore knees than this. I typically, you know, when I run, but I've always ran on concrete. This is my first trail run too, so, but no, nothing.
Okay. In general, calves, quads, hamstrings, any kind of issues there than just the normal?
No, little
Soreness.
tightness, no, but I'm starting to feel my ankles a little bit. Maybe they're starting to swell up, but
Okay.
nothing major.
Okay. Moving up, we know you had crotch issues with the whole chafing thing.
Big
Address
time.
that. Anything?
No, I try to be as
Lucky dog.
conscious of that as possible and maintain.
Did you use any product?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was a desperate grab at Walmart too, of anything from like diaper rash to Vaseline to you know, adult lubricants, and I just made my own little concoction of the three.
Yeah.
And just, you know, started off every 20 miles and maybe every 5 miles or 6 miles. But no,
Speaking of adult lubricants,
I use the same.
yeah.
It's really great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
did the job. All right. So I don't know if you had this issue, but I know early on you had something going on right up in here.
Yeah, I started experiencing the nipple chafe, which I've only read about, you know, and then out of curiosity, I had to Google some pictures, and I knew, you know, if anything, I never wanted that to happen to me, so I made sure, and that was right when I met you. I think we're on mile 8 or 10, and I started feeling it right away. We were running in the cross breeze, and I had sweat, and just created a strong rubbing. So anyway,
How'd we fix that?
Band-Aids, and a little foot lubricant, and
And
then
did it affect you from that point on?
no, no.
On top of it. So it shows, get on top of something early
Yeah.
and before it gets really serious.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, you know what we missed? We got. I know about your gut issue, so.
Might have set the course record for vomiting. I think before we had hooked up, I don't know, grew maybe 10 times at least, ballpark. Because I came into the event a little sick and on some antibiotics. So we got through that, and I could keep food down and some liquids, and then through the night, Ed had the pleasure of hearing me throw up very loudly.
There are people who cry silently and people who wail. There are people who vomit silently and people who, I mean, you hear it echo throughout the mountains. Yeah.
Thought it was a donkey.
Yeah. It is.
We were competing. I kept them going.
Yeah. All right. So you really had some stomach issues that throughout.
Yeah, just some
plagued you.
nausea. I think maybe
Yeah.
from the heat combination of things.
Yeah. All right. Gabe, any stomach stuff going on for you?
Nothing. No, I was really fortunate.
What about foods? How did that work for you? Anything did work?
Typically, solid food. There's nothing that I'd really avoid. Today, for me, there's things that just the thought of made me feel sick. And then, I tried to eat some of those things anyway. But
And those are things you left on the course? Or you
Um,
tried to make yourself eat some things?
I try to make myself eat because it's just been some time and I felt like I'd kind of tanked, so I wanted to get something in me. And other things seemed really appealing, so if it seems appealing, eat it.
There you go. Okay. Food-wise, anything in particular you found that worked or didn't work for you? Gabe?
No, I really didn't eat a lot throughout the event, as much as just snacking on a little something every couple loops. But I probably, more than anything, ate the jelly beans and gummy bears. And that's just because I have a sweet tooth, so I was
Hey, if it
running
worked for you.
running around with a cup of jelly beans, kind of drinking it, and that's what worked for me. On day 3, I had a couple veggie burgers, but that's about it.
Vegetarian,
Vegetarian.
non-vegetarian?
Equal opportunity, anything.
Hey, again,
Anything that sounds good, sounds
it's
good.
in, down the hatch.
Down the hatch.
Okay. Now, the most intriguing thing to me about ultra running, as far as our effect and how we handle things out there, is what goes on up here. So we want to kind of wrap things up, maybe talk a little bit about that,
Yeah.
mentally, what you went through, good and bad, and how you got yourself to get to that finish. So, Francisco.
When I came in, I'd already felt like I shouldn't have come to the event. So I think honestly, if I were to assess, that set the stage for some like negative self-talk. But the team really kept me going, and their language wasn't my train of thought. And over time, it started to change slowly. It was very difficult for me. And then you picked me up, and we just continued the same, and it started to change. I was feeling better, and then just started to reframe negatives into maybe not outright positives, but just focusing on one thing at a time, figuring out how to deal with it, and then moving to the next.
So how important of a role would you say the positive attitude had in you completing a 100-mile race?
Without it, I wouldn't have finished.
All right. Gabe, mental things for you.
Well, I think the mind is the most important aspect in anything physical, especially, having the background in boxing and just other experiences. I'm a huge fan of, positive psychology and self-help books. I read my first one when I was 14, and I've read probably hundreds since. And, just our conversations early on in the race of, you're not going to feel good forever, but you're not going to feel bad forever. That kind of stuck with me throughout. And just going in, I've learned to welcome hardship into my life is weird as it might seem, but, I think there's always something you can gain from a tough time, and there's really, a lot more so than the great times. But
This is why these guys finished what they did, because the thought process is up here.
yeah, and if nothing else, I knew it was, I'm only gonna have to do this for 72 hours. There was a definite deadline, whereas when I was living in my truck, I never knew how long it would end. All I know is keep going.
Yeah.
And that's it. And there were so many times I was gonna quit, but I just thought, and then what? And then what? You have no choice but to keep going.
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
Okay. So final wrap up.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone that just like you both were before you got here just a few days ago, had not completed a 100-mile race? What advice would you give to someone considering doing their first 100?
Considering, what came to mind real quick was during the race, and it's some advice from you that I would just echo. When I was having a real difficult time, what you shared with me was to find someone, you'll come across them on the course that's also really suffering, and direct, your effort to bringing them, around, changing their mindset, and in turn, right, you're both rewarded. I mean, you're helping someone out. Also, I've been maybe guilty of it, like on the course. Sometimes I can be a little bit timid and maybe not ask some questions. And I'm certain there are other folks that don't ask outright for any number of reasons, right? But if given the opportunity, right, just take the opportunity to ask, because I think the community would be happy to share.
You felt that they were open and
Absolutely.
honest with you and willing to help you, even though you're competing against people that you're asking advice from, but they're looking out for your best interest, not trying to give you advice that's going to sabotage you and put them in a better position.
Right. And I feel like because everyone's going through the same thing, right? It's not just me suffering. Everyone in their own ways also going through it.
Okay. Your advice to a first-time runner or someone considering doing their first 100-mile race?
I would say go for it. Don't let the idea of not being able to complete it stop you from even trying, because I think everyone, I believe people were born to do great things. I think that's our calling. And I think, no matter how, tough things are, or the people around you, the people I met in the past 3 days have been the greatest people I've met in my entire life, and among them, and I it's fantastic. But even if those people around you don't believe in you, you owe it to yourself, to believe in yourself. And with that, I mean, you can really do anything, and I believe that.
And please remember, these guys are this lucid with like hardly any sleep at all. They're able to actually think clearly and put two words together that makes sense. There's some intelligence there.
Yeah.
All right, so I wasn't even thinking when we started this I should have brought my buckle of rings, but I mean my ring of buckles. But you guys have your two buckles, so let's show those off. And I want to tell both you guys it was an honor to share miles with you. And as much as you may not believe this, you both helped me in my race. I was able to set the course record for the 48-hour event, and so I'm glad to have both 72-hour and 48-hour course records here, and being able to spend time with you guys really helped me out. So thank you for your candidness and for being willing to share.
Yeah.
All right?
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And congrats on your record.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank
All right.
you, man.
Jester on.